Greetings, welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I am blessed on Sword and Sandal Cinema to be speaking with one of our scholars from the edge of time, Michele Brittany. Greetings, Michele. How are you?
Greetings, Hercules. I'm doing very well. I have our resident podcast cat here with me, Cecily. She's currently cleaning her paws, so she will probably make an appearance in a little bit. But I am doing well. It's Tuesday evening, our fifth Tuesday of the month. So that does mean, that we actually get to chat twice in 1 month, which is
That is
always
awesome.
a real treat.
Same here. And Cecily, it's great to have you as well. There she goes.
There she is. You're going to see kind of a blurred tail and things like that. Um, without further ado, I thought since we didn't get a chance to really talk last week about like what Nick and I have been working on, I thought I'd spend, a couple minutes on that. As you know, and maybe many of your watchers know by now, I'm co-editing a book on the Mummy franchise. And in particular, we're focused in on the 1999 Stephen Sommers Mummy film, but we're really, have uh, thought by our writers to feel free to explore all of the Mummy films in Universal, with also tangible touches to like Hammer horror and things like that. So we've had a few writers that have pulled in like the early, Carl Friend, 1932, The Mummy. Then we've also had people bring in The Mummy Returns from 2001, and even the third Mummy movie, um, which is escaping me right at the moment, but it's the Empire one, The Emperor,
Yeah,
and from 2008. So we just finished going through reading all of the essays. And I won't speak for my co-editor, but I think he would probably agree that the caliber of writing of essays that we received were really a pleasant surprise. You never know quite what you're going to get when you're doing a collection, when you're, curating a collection and you're looking to have kind of a cohesive tone and throughout that's academic, but also kind of straddles kind of pop culture. And obviously, The Mummy is very much pervasive in pop culture. So we were very pleasantly surprised that we got a wonderful selection of essays back that really explored the franchise from many different lenses. Very insightful, very thoroughly thought out discussions about, the Mummy, as well as the franchise as a whole. Looking at gender, obviously, is going to be one of the sections, but we also look at Eastern mythologies, the Egyptian mythology, Middle Eastern cinema. Um, Monster theory is part of it, obviously, pop culture. So we really feel like we've gotten a really good selection. We're very excited. We'll be sending off our edits back to our writers in the next day or so, and we will continue along the process of the manuscript. We're actually going to be submitting our manuscript in November, and with the academic presses, they will also include many of their own steps of going through the manuscript,
yes.
including doing, for this academic press, they're going to do a double blind peer review. And then, it'll go from there. Once everything's finalized, then they'll start working on, putting the manuscript, getting the print ready and things like that. And we'll come back in. We'll have probably a few little edits to do. Usually it's pretty much cleanup at that time. And then we're actually looking at probably a early 2026 release. So it's still quite a ways off, but given that it is an academic press, there's still a lot of steps to go. So there'll be many more months of working on this manuscript. But I do feel that given the essays that we have, I'm very excited, and I think it'll be a really good book at the end of the process. We do have a title. I'm trying to remember. I don't happen to have my paper in front of me, but I think the tentative title is No Harm Ever Came from Reading a Book. And then I think the subtitle is like Critical Essays on the Mummy franchise, I think is the subheader or subtitle. So very excited about that. That's been kind of my primary focus for the past month. But knowing that, that's going to be at least a lot of the laborious steps will be taken care of in the next few months. I am actually, Cecily, I am actually trying to decide what I'd like to do next for a project. And I am kind of thinking I might go back to the Highlander. Unfortunately, last year my call for papers wasn't very successful, and I did have to cancel that project. But I am looking to maybe pick that back up early next year and work on something, particularly since we will be having a movie at some point coming out with Henry Cavill and many others. I think Russell Crowe actually is going to be in it as well. I don't know who else, but those two for sure. So it might be fortuitous to revisit that project and maybe think of a book project. And I think I would probably just do my own book rather than to go a collection route, given kind of the challenges last time. And there's so much material around Highlander that I think that I will be able to find something to spend 40 to 60,000 words on. So I don't think I'll have a problem with that part.
I don't think so either. And there is a lot of material. There's the movies, there's the television shows, there's the cartoon, there's books, I'm sure, and comic books and games.
I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I think a lot of people think, oh, the movies, and then once you get past that, I think I have all the novels, and I have started to read through those, and those are fun. Obviously the television series, as well as the Raven series. And like you said, comic books, video games, there's music to talk about even, the animated series. So there's a treasure trove of material there regarding Highlander. So I'm looking forward to possibly getting back into that early next year.
That would be awesome. I'm looking forward to reading that when it comes out. I remember last time you were trying to get the papers together, and I wished I knew more about Highlander. So I read about it. Scorpion King, I know a lot about, and so I watched the Mummy movies and the cartoons and the books, and so that one I'm on top of. I don't know if you can see it, but I have
Oh, yes.
one of my tattoos
Oh, that is neat.
is Scorpion King type scorpion.
Yeah.
And when I was doing a lot of past life regressions when I was a lot younger,
Hmm.
I was experiencing a period that I assume was Egyptian history, but they didn't know about pre-dynastic Egypt very much when I was young.
Hmm.
Later on, I came across an article, was pre-dynastic Egypt the Hyborian Age? It was in some Conan zine, and I read it. Then I started researching pre-dynastic Egypt, and I found that my images, here they are.
Hmm.
This is what I was experiencing in those past life regressions. So when the Scorpion King came out, I revisited them, and I got this scorpion tattoo to remind me of that particular thread in my life story.
Oh, that's very nice. And it's a beautiful tattoo. How long have you had it?
I've had it since I had my TV show, so it would be from the late 80s, early 90s.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow, that's a long time. Um, I was going to say, you reminded me, and I'm going to have to look in my collection of Egyptian books, but there is a very good study on pre-dynastic Egypt. And I'll have to find it. I know it's written by a Michael, but I can't remember his last name, but I'll find it and I'll let you know.
Thank you.
And it's one that I happened to find in like one of the used bookstores, but it's like one of the only ones that I found that really talks about that pre-dynastic period in Egypt. And so it probably would be interesting for you if you're still kind of fascinated by that period of time. So,
And
uh,
when right now I'm having difficulty with balance. So going down basement stairs is not in the cards right now. But I have a couple of crates of Egyptian stuff that I'd like to, when I can get down there to go through it, I will email you or call you or something and see if you're interested in it. And I know it'll find a good home if you want it.
yes.
It'll be appreciated and used.
Oh yeah, definitely. I have quite the collection behind me, and then it's actually grown and it's out in our part of our living room as well. So, but talking about pre-dynastic, it might be a good point to kind of turn what I prepared for this evening. And it's kind of in honor of the fact that we have the 2024 Summer Olympics being held right now. And I know as a kid, I used to watch the Olympics a lot. And I've been seeing on Facebook a lot of like the gymnast routines, some of the aquatic ballet, and things like that showing up on my Facebook feed. And I was like, ah, this might be a good segue into a festival that I learned about not too long ago. But before I reveal the festival, I thought I'd mention a little bit about what our Olympics are like today, and kind of the numbers around them to kind of give some, you know, foundation, get us kind of on the same page. So we are in, I think, our 33rd Olympics, Summer Olympics, I believe. And the opening ceremonies, I believe, was like last Friday. And they will continue through August 11th, I believe. There are 206 nations taking part in the Olympics, representing 10,714 athletes. A
Wow.
lot.
Yes.
There are 329 events in 32 different sports, and it cost 9 billion euros for this Olympics, which is being held in Paris. And I thought it was a good stepping off point because, of course, the Olympics has a very long history with civilization as a whole. You know, obviously, we have the ancient Olympic Games that were held in Olympia, Greece, around the 8th century to about the 4th century BC. And they were held every 4 years, just like we have them now. And, you know, when I think back to like the early Olympics, the ancient Olympics, I always think about, you know, the statues and the images of athletes, you know, like on the beautiful Greek vases as they were participating in different sports and activities, you know, showing their physical vitality, their virility. And, you know, I thought about how, you know, so often our images come to the physical manifestation. And obviously, in today's world, you know, there's, it shouldn't be based on politics, but, there have been times through the Olympics history where there was very much politics involved. But the early ones also had a religious component, and that's what I was kind of picking up on with regards to kind of looking back into the history of the Olympics. And so with that being said, I thought I'd turn to ancient Egypt and what they might have had. And they did have a festival called the Set Festival. And it's a festival that name was taken from the wolf god called Wep Wop Wet. And I'm pretty sure I did not pronounce that right, and I apologize. I'm phonetically speaking it. The other term is obviously Set, and it was a wolf god. But it was also known as the Hepsed, or more informal name, the Feast of the Tail. And that was derived from the animal tail that was attached to the pharaoh's garment back in the early days of this Set festival. The earlier attire for this festival might have actually been made out of animal skins. And of course, you would have had the tail attached at the end. And that's why the Festival of the Tail came about. I think, and I'm going to make, I'm making an assumption, but also kind of deducing from the research that I've done for tonight, is that the garment for the festival, like the festival itself, did change and evolve over time. And obviously, because it is a festival, it was highly ritualized. It was religious. It also had some political aspects to it as well, because this Set festival revolved around the pharaoh. And the festival actually comes from pre-dynastic Egypt period. So it fits very well with our earlier kind of segue to the Scorpion King. And there is some research and archaeological artifacts that tend to reveal that perhaps this early ritual revolved around if the pharaoh could not complete the festival, which was a number of different physical trials, that the pharaoh would be murdered at this festival.
Wow, talk about incentive to succeed.
Yeah, no kidding. And of course I'm thinking, okay, the life expectancy back then was not like, really long. So, and wasn't like the best health necessarily, so, you could get inflicted with something. And even though the Egyptians had good medicine and things like that, obviously that was definitely good incentive. But it also, kind of structured the festival around the fact of the effectiveness of the pharaoh, obviously, the incentive to do well. But if they had more age on them, or if there were circumstances that were happening, they were kind of SOL, and it, over time, as the dynastic structure came about, the Set festival did come into existence in its more recognizable form. And it shifted away from, potential a bloody display to one that celebrated the pharaoh's success as ruler. And it was marked at his 30th year of reign on the throne, which is, again, kind of interesting, because if you think back, again, life expectancy was not real long back then. So to be able to live and rule past your 30th year was pretty unique. But thereafter, after that 30-year mark was hit, then the pharaoh would approximately every 3 or 4 years have another set festival. And basically, what this festival did was to reaffirm, renew, and kind of rejuvenate the pharaoh and his rule over uh, over Egypt, uniting Upper and Lower Egypt together, but also kind of more symbolically becoming a mediator to that eternal struggle between chaos and order that we see amongst the gods, and as we read in the mythologies. So hieroglyphs document the pharaoh running around. So as I mentioned earlier, there were physical components to the festival because it was highly ritualized, very symbolic, and of course revolved around reaffirming and rejuvenating the pharaoh and renewing his commitment, but also his right to rule. And so some of the physical activities that he would have done, he or she, because Pharaoh Hatshepsut had a said festival. So, it could be male or female. So some of the activities that they would have engaged in is running around ritual boundary markers that would have provided a document, a physical manifestation of their fitness and vitality. The pharaoh was seen in hieroglyphs striking a copper plate with a mace, which would have provided a display, a show of strength, and ability to protect Egypt against its enemies, beyond their borders. And then one of the easier physical activities, which I would have been all for. Well, no, I would have been all for wearing the different crowns, but I would have been up for, doing the ritual sacrifices wearing each crown. But that was also one of the other physical activities. One of the other ones that a pharaoh might engage in is a mock battle, where they would have donned their armor, their battle regalia, and they would have, you know, uh, completed different maneuvers to kind of show again his prowess as a ruler and as a military leader, to again show to the gods and to the people that he has that right to serve, but also bringing balance to Egypt. And so that kind of gives you an idea of the said festival. And as I said, the said festival would have occurred at the 30-year mark. And then thereafter, it would have been about every 3 or 4 years. But throughout the dynastic history, we did have some little fudging. Like Hatshepsut, for instance, she, I believe, counted her set festival from the time that she was a co-regent with her father. So she had her 30th, but she didn't necessarily rule on her own at that time for 30 years. But she did complete a set festival. And then we also have rulers that, they didn't wait for their 30th. They figured, I've ruled for 3 years. I'm for a set festival. And that would have been Akhenaten, which makes complete sense because as the heretic, and trying to legitimize his monotheism, and having one God. I could totally see him wanting to, have a said festival every 3 or 4 years to continually to reaffirm that his rule was in keeping with, the higher God, and that he was balancing the chaos and the order. One of the other things interesting about these festivals and what might be on your mind is like, well, where did these occur? Well, we all know the Egyptians loved architecture. And so the Set Festival, or, Royal Pharaonic Jubilee, was very important. And so we see throughout the dynastic structure from Old Kingdom to Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom, and even the late period, when you had the Libyan era kings, there were this festival going on for different pharaohs. And they would, as they probably were nearing their 30th year of rule, prepared temples and open courtyards in which to have this festival and reaffirm and renew their commitment and bring order to Egypt. One of the early ones is actually at the Step Pyramid, and that would have been during, I'm trying to think, that was the Old Kingdom, and that would have been Pharaoh Dozier, and he ruled during the Third Dynasty. And so part of the Step Pyramid complex, he actually had a courtyard area for his festival. Hi. Oh, I will wrap up soon.
Yeah, keep going, keep going.
Oh, okay. So he had one, and we can still see that today. And I in fact show a couple of pictures real quick, since we are visual. I have visual aids with me. Another example came from the Middle Kingdom, which was Senseret the first. He actually built what is called a white chapel or pavilion to hold his festival. And he built that to commemorate his 30th. And unfortunately, the pavilion was eventually dismantled, and the bricks, the blocks were reappropriated elsewhere. But I think in the early 20th century, there was an archaeologist that went through, I believe it was back that time, who went through, kind of laid out all the blocks and rebuilt the White Chapel. So it does exist, and I think it's in the Karnak complex. But I apologize, I may be wrong about that. So
This is all exciting stuff. I didn't know any of this, so I'm very excited. So if you forgot something, no big deal. There's so much there to think about and to research.
Yeah. So I think that that's actually really cool. And one of the last festivals to take place, like I mentioned earlier, is that even in the very late dynastic periods, when you had the Libyan rulers that were coming into like Tanis and Bastius, where they had the temple for the kitties, there was a king, Osorkon II, and he built a temple in the city, and it includes a red granite gateway, and it documents his festival and his accomplishments and his success. So I thought what I'd do is show just a couple of pictures. I'm actually going to I'm using this book, and I apologize.
Okay.
It is and it is the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Ancient Egypt. And I'll be honest, go and look at Barnes and Noble. I'm not to give them necessarily a plug, but they do have inexpensive books, and they will typically have stuff on the ancient civilizations.
At the
And
clearance table,
I
they
did
have
pick,
them.
yeah, I picked this one up, and they actually have a picture of, I thought I would show, this is, oh geez, my attempt to blurs everything. So here is obviously the step pyramid, in case, you know, its name wasn't quite clear. Pharaoh Hoser there. And then this book actually has a section on the festival, but I do want to show pictures of the courtyard. Here's a picture of
Very
the
nice.
courtyard right here. And here's another one back there. And his is in amazingly good shape. And I just want to show a couple of other pictures because, like I mentioned earlier, there are several documents in the hieroglyphs on the walls of the festival. And so, like, Akhenaten's is over here, if you can see that. And one of his household people is carrying his slippers as he completes one of his tests, I believe. And then over here, we have Pharaoh Dozier, and it's very hard to see, but there is a hieroglyph showing him doing the ceremonial run. And just really fascinating stuff. And what I thought I'd do to finish off, in another book, I have The World of the Pharaohs, A Complete Guide to Ancient Egypt. Christine Hobson is the author. And I thought I would finish off and show a map first, a nice map. So you've got the step pyramid, and then right in here is where the courtyard was. So I thought I'd read just a quick snippet of her description of it. To the east of the main courtyard in front of the pyramid lies a smaller enclosed courtyard faced with a series of small rectangular buildings that proved, when excavated, to be dummies constructed of solid stone.
Oh, wow.
13 on the west side and 13 on the east side. So those were the kind of buildings with the arch, and then the columns coming down. All the buildings have a facade with 4 slender columns joined to the front face and a curved roof. At the head of each of the columns was a large round hole, probably designed to hold a flagpole, each flagpole bearing the banner of a different political area or nome of Upper and Lower Egypt. While the northern end of the courtyard had curved corners, the southern end had a small square stone dais in the center of it. The purpose of the courtyard appears to have been the celebration of a said festival. On these occasions, the king was required to prove his physical fitness to rule Egypt by running a set course on behalf of each nome area. Provided he completed the course successfully, he would reenact his coronation, the crowns of Egypt, and the regalia being presented to him while he was seated under a canopy on a dais. The word said in ancient Egyptian means to slay or to slaughter. So that's where kind of the ideas, maybe the early, very early pharaohs, if they weren't able to complete, that they might be slain. So, and there seems to be little doubt that in pre-dynastic times, should the king have failed to run the course, he would have been killed and replaced. By the time of the step pyramid was built during the Third Dynasty, this primitive ritual had been turned into a ceremonial jubilee festival, and no such barbaric royal sacrifice would be made. So anyway, that is kind of my look at the said festival, or the Pharaonic Jubilee, during the pre-dynastic and the dynastic period of ancient Egypt, in honor of the Olympics that are going on right now, as we celebrate the beautiful sports that we have today, and all the athletes that are participating. We wish them well, obviously, knowing that they carry on their shoulders a very long history of Olympic activities, and they go back even to ancient Egypt and the pharaohs that ruled during that time. So that's my presentation.
So very much. That is awesome. And just a bit of Olympic trivia. Although historically we have other facts about how the Olympic Games started, mythologically, Hercules, or two different versions of Hercules, started the Olympic Games. The Cretan Hercules, or also called the Adiandactyl Hercules, credited with starting the Olympics, and the Theban Hercules, which is the one that we know from the labors and things like that. He's also credited with starting the Olympics. So one of them started the Olympics on some level, spiritual, physical, we don't quite know. And is there any significance to the numbers 30 and then 3 and 4, which
There is. Actually, I did find that there's significance to the number 30. That being that it is kind of a completion number
okay,
for ancient Egyptian beliefs, that that was like a completion of a cycle. And that's why they would hold it at the 30th year. I don't know why they did 3 or 4 years. I think it was meant to be kind of three, every 3 years. But I don't think that there are a lot of pharaohs that actually, even made it to the 30-year mark, and then to try to do it every 30 years. I mean, honestly, the only pharaoh that I can think of is Ramses II, who I believe ruled, if I'm correct, I think for 67 years. So
wow,
if they were only doing them every 30 years, he would have done it twice, once as a very young man, and then again, much older. I think that, keeping in mind the idea of the religious significance and the mythology around 30 and a completion of 30, I can see where the 3 would perhaps be a more political designation, as a way to, maintain that control, particularly if it's a chaotic time when you've got the Hittites, coming through and creating, political, military unrest, and, when there's just been economic downturn, because they were so reliant on the Nile and, being able to have bounty. If you had, a bad year, I could see wanting to do a festival that would kind of try to bring people out of the slump, because I do think it was, not just political, but a morale booster too, because it was, an entire country that was impacted, and they did truly believe that this had, effect on them physically. There was a physicality to completing this festival. So I think that there was a lot that went into a lot of components. There obviously it was popular through, you know, 2,000-3,000 years of dynastic history, 2,000 years, I guess, dynastic history. And I could see why they would want to do that, particularly if you're having a bad year, that you'd hold that. So.
I can see that, and I could see it mirror in things that are happening now. We have a presidential race every 4 years,
Mhm.
and the issue of the fitness physically, the physical fitness and the mental acuity of the leader came into question, and you had challenges to golf and all sorts of things. Uh, but that was an issue in terms of the wellness of our land, and the cohesion of our land was tied to economics and bounty, as you've pointed out. And also, although this comes from Robert Graves, and it's been decades since I read Robert Graves, I seem to recall that in his book on Greek mythology, his 2-volume book, he had something about how the kings had to do these tasks that were physically demanding, but later, and if the king couldn't fulfill his function, he would be slain, ritually slain, and somebody else would be put in. And that later on, the kings would have like a proxy. So if it wasn't them performing the task, the king's champion would perform the task. And if the king's champion failed, then he would be sacrificed instead of the king, and the king would continue and assign another champion.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because I think that there had to be champions for like Ramses II. I mean, obviously he can't run around when he's, in his 80s, or, however old he was at the time when he ruled, you know, um, say 60 years having ruled. He was probably what, 75 maybe. He can't run around a court and complete those kind of physical tasks. But I could definitely see if he had a proxy, or maybe a military leader that he trusted. So you had to be very selective about who you were going to have. I haven't found any information about that, but this is something I wouldn't mind coming back to again sometime. It would be interesting to do a comparison and have another discussion, and talk about how they're similar with the Greek
That would be
practices
great.
and
And I
things
was about to
like
suggest that because I have a series of shows that deal with physical fitness.
that. Hmm.
And I also have a series of shows that deal with politics. So this topic would fit on both shows. So I was going to ask you if you minded giving parts of the presentation over, focusing on first the physical fitness aspect, and then give the same presentation, but focus on the political aspect and how the king and the land are one, as it said in Excalibur. And there was another similarity. Oh yes, the Roman emperors like Commodus. Commodus was in a song they called him a pretend gladiator. Uh, so he would go out there and fight in gladiatorial combats and cause death, but he was relatively safe. He just like playing a gladiator. And Nero had himself proclaimed a champion in the Olympics of the time, and because he was a very volatile and dangerous Roman Empire, they would assign him the crowns, the wreaths, and the glory. And even today, too, one of our political candidates is accused of cheating at golf to win trophies. So I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know if it's true or not. But
Yeah.
it's something that came out, and it is something that still concerns leaders. And I know that the leader of Russia, he's often in pictures shirtless, riding a horse and doing other uh,
Oh, yeah.
masculine things. So again, that must be a very primitive part of our soul. But even now, millennia after the events that you're describing, some of these elements still seem to be very important to for a leader to embody and express on some level, to show their fitness to rule and to maintain the wellness of the land.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely be an interesting conversation. And yeah, it's kind of hard to, voice anything against, Roman emperor, especially Nero, to say, you didn't actually win that. Yeah. But yeah, I would be happy to join the other series and focus in on one and then the other. I'll definitely do a little bit more research on now that I found a couple other books, because it was a little challenging to find a lot of information. It's kind of one that's overlooked a little bit. So I was very happy to find in my discount book actually a couple of sections on it. So, but I didn't find that until like a few minutes coming on. So that I could definitely read and then add to the next presentation. But yeah, I'd love to do that. I think this is really fascinating. I didn't know that much about it. So this was definitely an interesting discussion and learning experience for me.
For me as well, I didn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Greek stuff I knew about. There's tons of books because of the Olympics on ancient Greek athleticism and the philosophy. There's even a spiritual component to those statues of athletes. And I have a show on that. It's called Living Theurgy. The Greeks used to welcome the essence of the god in the statues. Then they used to take care of the statues. They used to wash them. They used to dress them. They were painted to look lifelike, like mannequins, rather than they weren't bleached white like they got in the sun and in the wind. But they actually looked like people, and they were dressed like people. They would take them to the river and wash them, and then they could lower the energy of the god into the statue, so the god could be physically present in our reality, or you could put the essence of the god inside an innocent or inside yourself, or a talisman of some sort. But this way, you were inviting the god to interact with our reality here. So with the statues of the athletes and the gods, there was that, that this was like divine essence and energy coming in and again, giving its bounty to the society and its blessing to the society.
Yeah. And of course, you have that with the ancient Egyptians, and a lot of their ritual around the god statues that that they had their own temple, and usually it was the king's wife that would take care of the statues, washing them, caring for them, completing certain rituals around the statues because of the belief that, the god's essence could be in it. So it's so interesting how, all these different beliefs and practices and how really similar they are if you start plotting them across time, and how uh, there's so many common threads in each one.
Yes.
So I feel badly because Nick has not had an opportunity to come on.
I can do it next time.
Oh, okay.
That's your top of the hour.
Oh, we're almost at the top of the hour. So Nick is being a very, very wonderful gentleman and said that he will wait until next time to discuss his movie. I think it was, I can give you a little tease.
Okay.
Kind of also in the theme of the Olympics and displays of physicality. He's going to talk about Endgame.
Movie rules.
Is that Avengers Endgame or no?
No, this is an Italian. It was directed by Joe D'Amato, and it was 1983.
Okay.
So he will discuss that at the next fifth Tuesday, and I will give him the entire hour of the floor so that way he can discuss his movie. I'm sure he has a lot to say about that. So
I'm looking forward to listening to it, and I will let you know when we're doing those things. So you're more than welcome. Anytime you want to give a presentation on the Egyptian, let me know and we'll do a special. Because Setnov Kemet, also known as Michael K. Waterman, he is an expert in Egyptian ritual and mythology and things like that. So if we could coordinate topics, I would love to do a series of short shows on, matters Egyptian on a regular or an irregular basis, depending on everybody's schedule. So dream with me. Let me know what you'd like to talk about whenever you get a chance, and we'll structure and make some sort of show. And
That sounds good. I know that he, has a lot of knowledge and wisdom, much more than I do. But yes, definitely, that would be a good series to have, like maybe a, 3 or 5 part series, and
right,
just discuss something over a period of time, or different aspects of it. Like you said, the SED festival, to talk about the religious component, the physicality, and the political, and kind of taking a deep dive on each one. And I also think, bringing in, the Greek and the Roman as well, given the fact that they have their respective practices that are not totally dissimilar. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. You've given me something to look forward to and to start working on. So thank you so very much. Always a pleasure to speak with you and Nick. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation. How can people enter your world and Nick's world?
well, I would say with my world, I do have an Amazon author page that links to, I think, all or almost all of my books that I'm involved with, either editing or co-editing or writing a chapter on. I do have a website. It's michellebrittany.com. I don't keep it really up to date because, no big surprise, I'm not really huge on social media. But my cohort and partner, Nicholas Dyack, has a very prolific website, nickdyack.com. And he actually lists like all of our Scholars from the Edge of Time and the Fifth Tuesday work that we do together. And he does have, I think, a bi-weekly kind of roundup, or maybe it's a weekly roundup. So definitely check that out because he does do a lot of the peplum work, as well as now doing a list for like calls to papers, conferences and things like that, to help spread the news on different opportunities to share ideas and to do presentations regarding research. So that was nickdyack.com, and you can always shoot him an email. I think he's got a way to contact him, so you can do it through that. If you're trying to get me, you can always contact you and reach me that way too. So.
I'd be honored. And you guys do the HP Lovecast, and when I visit the page, you're very busy giving a lot of interviews and focusing on a lot of topics. So people should be paying close attention, because you guys are very generous with your information, and it's always very high quality information. That's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus, so if people go over there, we haven't had a lot of activity for this year, in part because we're both working on respective books, but we are looking to this coming August, this next month, to get back into doing some recording, and at least doing a once a month episode at HP Lovecast. So we will be getting back in there. So if you also like Lovecraftian literature, definitely check us out next month when we start up that podcast again.
I'm looking forward to it. And again, please feel free to link to all your various adventures, informational or otherwise, on my web pages. I know that Nick posts sometimes on my Facebook face page and sometimes in Sword and Sandal Cinema, but feel free to do it more often.
Yes, and I'll definitely share like the couple of books that I used, and then when we do the other presentations, we'll definitely have to make sure that we post that, and hopefully people will join us for a deeper dive into the SED festival. And with that, I'm going to pass the torch of knowledge and of the gods back to you, Hercules, to finish up the hour.
Thank you again, and thanks to all our wonderful listeners. This will be on YouTube within 24 hours. And thank you. You taught me a lot today, and you gave me something to think about in terms of the ritual aspects of the Olympic Games and other ancient kingship trials, I guess we'll call them. So again, I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. And as always, Hercules, I appreciate this platform, and I always enjoy us getting to chat and talk about new topics and obviously ancient ones.
Same here. Have a wonderful evening, Michelle.
Thank you. You too.